We are introducing Arewa Youth Mentorship Program. The AYMP is a collection of Northern Nigeria academics and professionals from different spheres of life who volunteer to offer free mentorship and equip Northern Nigeria youth at all levels with necessary knowledge on career opportunities, scholarship grants, personality building, innovation, among others.
Welcome to the 49th session of the Arewa Youth Mentorship Program. Today's webinar, we are pleased to have some of Nigeria's finest economic thinkers, individuals who have shaped policy, guided institutions, and contributed significantly to our understanding of Nigeria's economic landscape. For the sake of those joining us for the first time, the Arewa Youth Mentorship Program platform was founded about 5 years ago with a mission to provide awareness and guidance to young people on a broad range of topical issues, including scholarships, opportunities, and entrepreneurship, as well as mentorship and leadership training, and several other national issues. So we are also proud to note the remarkable impact that this initiative has recorded, and this is reflected in the feedback we have been receiving from the over 25,000 mentees in our various platforms. So on behalf of the Arewa Youth Mentorship Program, I warmly welcome you all to today's national conversation on a topic that touches almost every Nigerian household, business, and future generation, Nigeria's economic fragility. So at a time when the country, of course, is grappling with fiscal pressures, rising costs, and new tax regime set to commence early next year, this discussion could not be more timely or relevant. So before we dive into the session, if you are joining us for the first time, I encourage you to follow the Arewa Youth Mentorship Program pages on all our social media handles. I will share the link in the chat box. And you can also access our past sessions through our YouTube channel. So without taking much of our time, I would like to introduce our lead speaker, Dr. Rislanudeen Muhammad, and then he will give his talk for about 25 minutes, after which our special guests in the session will give their remarks, and we will have Q&A at the end. Meanwhile, you can also drop your questions or comments through the chat box, which will be open soon, so we can read it for the speaker. So Dr. Rislanudeen Muhammad is a seasoned economist. Dr. Rislanudeen, I apologize. I will try to summarize the CV. It's quite long, mashallah, but I will try to summarize it so that we can just jump into the session. So Dr. Rislanudeen Muhammad is a seasoned economist and a banker with over 30 years of experience across investment, commercial, retail, and development banking. He has served as acting MD/CEO of both Tropical Commercial Bank and Unity Bank PLC. He was also the chief economist and the head of strategy at the Bank of Industry. He holds a PhD in economics with distinction, and also he had an advanced executive training from Harvard, London Business School, IESE, and INSEAD. Dr. Muhammad is also deeply involved in national policy, research, and advisory work, and is widely recognized for his contributions to Nigeria's financial sector and economic governance. So it's a great privilege to have you with us today. And on behalf of the Arewa Youth Mentorship Program and all our participants, I would like to hand over the virtual mic to you.
Okay, thank you very much. I hope I'm being heard.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, okay. Thank you very much, Doctor, for the introduction and providing a brief about my own self. Second, I need to truly congratulate you all for initiating this Arewa, you call it Arewa Initiative Forum or something like that?
Yes, Arewa Youth Mentorship.
Youth Mentorship Forum, because honestly, there is nothing more important now than providing some kind of forum that will guide, educate, mentor our youth. Noting the fact that even countrywide, the median age of Nigerian population is about 25, 26 years. So it's a country of a very young population, and specifically for the North, is a country with a youth population that are largely uneducated, and even those that are educated, unguided. Because even if you are well educated, you need some kind of mentorship, some kind of guidance to be able to transit from the knowledge gained into some kind of productive life. Secondly, I also congratulate you for the initiative of organizing the webinar. So now I will go straight to the point on the main topic of discussion. I believe issue of debt sustainability, the vulnerabilities in debt, the trends in our growth, projection as to the future prospects is the most topical issue today, due largely in part to the fact that even if you go down to specifics, for example, to ask somebody that may be uninformed about the economic trajectory and any other thing, and just ask him about what is happening to the country on a general note. What is happening that government is saying that we have made up with a revenue target, for example, and yet government cannot fully implement 2024 budget, and yet more so, even more specifically, government cannot be able to pay contractors simply for dearth of funds. So what is really happening? And I will attempt to provide some highlights given the limited time that we have today. Now, what are the critical drivers, key drivers of the growth in debt in the first place? Number one, there is issue of high domestic interest rate. If you recall that government now can be talking, bragging that our reserves has improved, is high, exchange rate has stabilized, but at what cost? At what cost? Truly, government has done well, the CBN has done well in stabilizing exchange rate, but the money that we have in the reserve is largely monies belong to what is called foreign portfolio investors, people that bring in money, the so-called hot money, that will bring in money for a year or two, invest in financial assets, more specifically like in treasury bills and so on, and make some money and take away their money. The key issue is the typical capitalist requirement of free entry and exit, kind of. So once that is established, which is fairly established now in Nigerian context, foreign portfolio investors will bring in the money. Think about it. Today, for example, treasury bills rate is hovers around 20%. And you know, the effective yield means 20% because treasury bills is not taxable. So there is nothing like tax. Whatever is stated 20%, there is nothing like withholding tax and so on. Where in this world will a portfolio investor get 20% interest on a short-term investment of 1 year or even 180 days and so on? So high interest rate is further increasing the debt trajectory. Exchange rate adjustments because of the devaluation has also increased the debt, the level of debt. Weaknesses in revenue mobilization. Like I said earlier on, the government was praising the revenue agencies, FIRS, customs, all meeting of their targets. But because of the pressure on what the government will do, it is becoming evidently clear, even when you juxtapose it in terms of peer review, like in African context, what is tax to GDP ratio of Nigeria and what is tax to GDP ratio in most other parts of Africa, you realize that we have a very low tax to GDP ratio. And also there is another problem is reliance on market-based borrowing, e.g., for example, Eurobonds. Eurobonds are typically expensive. So it's a double whammy. On the one hand, domestic debt, normally what is happening is money coming in, not for the purpose of growth, not for the purpose of supporting any investment, but for the purpose of stabilizing exchange rate and crowding out domestic growth, crowding out investment in industries and so on. And the projected deficit for 2027 is now heading about almost 53% of that of 2020, almost 20 trillion. So increased borrowing, that's underscored the need for increased borrowing to bridge the revenue gap if government is to meet up with its budget target. Note the fact that up to now, I believe I stand to be corrected, 2024 budget is being implemented. 2026 budget has not been announced. Of course, the AYMP medium-term economic framework has been presented, but you can see clearly that there is a fear of real contradiction. Yeah. Now, domestic debt currently it has increased from domestic debt has increased from 54.13 trillion in second quarter of 2023 to 80.55 trillion in second quarter of 2025. And FGM bonds, treasury bills, sukuk, and other savings instruments account for 52.8% of the total debt. External debt, which is largely made up of debt loans from the World Bank, African Development Bank, other bilateral loans, China, Exim Bank, Islamic Development Bank, Eurobond, and so on, it has rather increased to from 43.16 billion over the same period to 46.8 billion. And there is oil revenue challenges. Conservative oil assumptions for 2026 due to evident shortfalls in 2025. Domestic debt service increased also from 874 billion in the first quarter of 2023 to 2.37 trillion in the first quarter of 2025. And external debt service has reached 1.39 billion in the first quarter of 2025, with Eurobond obligations making up 31.5% of external debt service. Eurobond is expensive. Domestic debt is expensive. So you can see interest compounding of interest is also further accentuating the size of the debt that we have in Nigeria. So debt service to revenue ratio, which is expected to reach about 46% in 2026, highlighting the fiscal pressure. Note that 3-4 years ago, debt service to revenue ratio sometimes hovers over 100%, meaning the country has nothing truly to even pay salaries, talk less of recurrent expenditure, talk less of capital expenditure. The 2024 debt service actually absorbed over 50% of federal expenditure. And external payments reduced to 276 million by February 2025. And 2020 projected to absorb 46%, like I said, of total revenue. And there is also some form of vulnerabilities in terms of size of repayments, timeliness of repayments. Sometimes there is a back-to-back repayment of loan and borrowing, which is very dangerous, maybe kind of a vicious cycle, similar to what recently happened in terms of the Eurobond. maturities, annual maturities, which average about 1.33 billion. It was paid, including the coupons. And then new loans were taken. New Euro bonds were taken, almost the same time, back to back. And debt service burden continues to strain fiscal resources, crowding out, like I said earlier on, essential spending in terms of capital expenditure and so on. And the new tax reform policy also is projected to boost non-oil revenue starting in 2026. And the expectation is the new tax policy will improve the revenue. Of course, we know as economists that you cannot overtax because it will get a saturated period that people cannot simply be able to pay the whatever amount is allocated to them to pay as tax if there is no productivity. Even the theory of ASO LAFA, the so-called LAFA cap, project a situation where it is there is a certain limit within which you can no longer increase tax because it will be unproductive and so on and so forth. And also, we still have challenges of oil theft and persistent production shortfalls in terms of the major source of the revenue, particularly forex revenue, that is oil. Now, in terms of the global context, the issue of debt sustainability is not peculiar to Nigeria alone. Most developing countries are facing this huge crisis of debt burdens. In fact, recently the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development has warned that developing countries are truly facing rising debt burdens to the extent of a situation where some may no longer be able to really repay. So the debt to GDP ratio of Nigeria, like I say, remains around 40% post GDP rebasing. But challenges still, like I said earlier on, remain steps, low GDP base, as well as weak revenue. Public debt is currently 37.66% of GDP as of second quarter, but there is high possibility that it will further worsen. Of course, we can say that for Nigeria, there is broadly improving macroeconomic fundamentals. When we talk about inflation, rebased inflation rate, we talk about rebased GDP and so on, there is some form of sign of some of stability, exchange rate stability and so on. So GDP growth has strengthened, for example, to 4.23% in the second quarter of 2025, but the vulnerability still remains because it slowed to 3.98% in the third quarter of 2025. That is the latest position. Of course, because of the some level of stability that you have been seeing of recent, one can easily relate year on year that there is an improvement because it was 3.86% as at Q3 of 2024. Of course, like I said, the reserves has increased, helping in stabilizing the exchange rate market to over 43 billion. But yet, for a developing country, the central bank has a development financing role. It simply cannot insulate itself. If central bank say, no, I am not going to do anything that fiscal authorities can do, I'm not going to be involved in development financing simply because of the corruption, the poor management that has happened over the past, especially over the last 8 years. I think it is, to me, if I can make my own opinion, I think it is not the right step. The right step is to look at the mistakes done and correct it, because the gap in terms of filling in the gap in terms of development financing, up to now, we do not have a strong DFI that can be able to fill the gap. You can talk about Bank of Industry. Even Bank of Industry, without the support of central bank, cannot be able to meet up with a huge obligation of bridging the gap in terms of supporting low-cost loans to businesses that will help in creating jobs, that will indirectly also help in stabilizing the economy, especially inflation and so on, when there is increased productivity. But if that intervention just becomes zero, the situation will become rather complicated. Take, for example, the reduced intervention in agriculture, for example. Now, the people in the city are happy. Those in the city are happy because cost of agricultural products, rice, beans, and so on, has become very low. Because of what? Because of import. But what is the cost of fertilizer? What that implies is the government is deliberately making elites, quasi-elites happy by bringing down cost of food and creating huge crisis in the countryside. And that is certainly abnormal. That is not something that is sustainable. That is something that is, you are solving problem on this side, you are creating another bigger problem on the inside, because the economy cannot grow based on imports. Now, talking about revenue, the 2025 projected revenue to contribute 15.69 trillion. And like I said, most of the revenue targets has been made, but the government simply doesn't have money for most productive, most areas that the government wants to put into in terms of budgetary implementation and so on. The money is simply not there. So in terms of basic debt sustainability indicators, you talk about debt to GDP. It's very high. Debt to service revenue is also very high. And mark you, debt to GDP ratio is post rebasing, GDP rebasing, and it's still high, and it's still going up. There is also the interest cost that I have discussed, and interest costs at both ends, both domestically and in terms of foreign loans. Foreign loans, Eurobond and so on is very expensive. Long-term bilateral loans are cheaper, but Eurobonds make up substantial part of it, as well as loans from China and so on, also expensive. And then domestically, you have portfolio investors that are coming in, crowding out all forms of investment and stabilizing foreign exchange market. Climbing for CBN, that is the exchange rate has stabilized, and reserve has truly gone up, but the cost involved is to me not truly justifiable, and because what is happening, and we have had this kind of problem sometimes. I think during the time of Minister Kemi around 2018-19. There was currency crisis, and I think the strategies they put in place also was to go and show up the reserve and get some form of stability, and then also open the economy with bringing in portfolio investors. And in fact, treasury bills rate at that time, effective yield was about 24%, 25%, and nobody can run away from that. The economy, of course, there is country risk, but nobody will project that Nigeria will die. So once there is that opportunity, portfolio investors will come in. But in their coming, they crowd out everybody. Now, if you have effective yield of a treasury bills rate at such high 20%, and you have a double-digit MPR rate, nobody can borrow from the commercial banks. And if you borrow at over 30%, what are you going to do with the money? It's simply killing. So the economy is not growing. You want to talk about economic growth. The economy is truly not growing. What, to my mind, the particularly monetary authorities are doing is simply panel beating the economy to ensure that it is alive, it's kicking, it's not in a critical situation where maybe the economy needs a ventilator or something like that. The 2026 borrowing, which is outside the scope of this discussion, but I need to state that there is no end in sight to the crisis of borrowing and repayment, high interest costs, and that vicious cycle, because the projected government wants to spend a lot and there's simply no money. So there is projection of borrowing about 18 trillion to fund the budget, the huge budget deficit. And this is not only from at the national side, even subnational debt is rising. And the reports show that it has risen to 3.9896 trillion domestically and 4.81 billion externally by June, within a short period. So there is fiscal strain on major states, for example, like Lagos, Rivers, and Delta, are facing serious fiscal crisis with a very tight, fiscal space, with no option than to borrow and borrow again. And most of those states actually rely on federation account money. That is why most states now have a lot of money. They are doing a lot of projects, but there is always a vulnerability of price of oil, which is completely exogenous to any control by Nigerian state. So all related assumptions could further challenge subnational budget. If oil price goes down, revenue to the stream of government comes down, and they get less, they will also have challenges, which is always it always happen more like in a cyclical manner. So what are the opportunities and the risks? Now, the risk in terms of issues around debt stability is, number one, there is a high debt service cost limit, which limits spending on key sectors, because this huge cost, like I said now, government is now desperately shopping for almost 18 trillion, 7.89 trillion to be precise, but let's assume 18 trillion or even more to fund 2026 budget, an ambitious budget. So there is this issue of which limits the spending on key sectors like infrastructure and social programs. And we are getting into new tax reform. There are a lot of gaps. Can it be implemented? Can the ambitious policy be effectively implemented so that as it is being postulated, it's not going to overtax Nigerians, it's going to only tax more, tax the rich more? Is it going to be truly a progressive taxation? Is it going to be a taxation that will also bring in more people that are outside the tax bracket into the tax bracket, that are capable and of paying the tax and simply avoiding it, not simply to increase the tax on the poor? We will see how this implementation will come into being. Another risk, like I said, is issue of vulnerability of oil price shock, like oil theft, weaker oil prices, potential global shocks, and oil production challenges. Oil production challenges can be linked to issue of theft, can be issue to local attacks, and so on. And what are the opportunities? The opportunities is we will look at the 22 is outside this scope. Is the fiscal framework of 2026 realistic? And can it help, plus the new tax reform, in improving the fiscal discipline, macroeconomic stability? And can we be able also to have more multilateral support, which is more of a long-term, low-interest funds that will also support in providing more stable outlook? This is something that we can all think about and discuss. With the path forward, I suggest that we need to focus on refinancing costly debt with cheaper external financing. Run away as much as possible, because to my mind, going Eurobond borrowing is a desperate borrowing. As much as possible, a strong country should do away with Eurobond, go for long-term, cheaper external borrowing, not to crowd out, bring in money like a portfolio investment that add nothing to the economy, but bringing in liquidity, temporary liquidity to the central bank, and crowding out investment. Support a strengthened revenue mobilization and tax reform. Of course, the government has targeted that they are targeting 18% tax to GDP ratio by 2027. Very ambitious. I think the tax to GDP ratio is no more than 8-9% today. So it's truly ambitious. And with improved oil price, improved non-oil export, we project that we should also strive as much as possible to balance up through oil export diversification to have foreign exchange stability. The 43 billion or 45 billion is not stable, because these guys can take their money anytime. But if we have a stable macroeconomic frame where the economy grows, agriculture grows, non-oil export grows, so projected income is based on our own productivity. That is the extent to which we begin to think about having a stronger macroeconomic stability, especially around the foreign exchange market. So Nigeria's debt profile, on a general note, requires careful management and sustained reforms. Sustained reforms, mark the word. With the disciplined reforms, debt can transform from a burden, as it is now, into a strong driver for growth and resilience. To cap it all, I am not saying, as economists, I am against borrowing, but I am suggesting that we need to have a well-guided, well-thought-out borrowing that will support growth of our economy, not just borrowing as a temporary, desperate measure to provide temporary macroeconomic stability for the purpose of perhaps election and so on. So I thank you very much for your time, and I hope I have not spoken more than the required time allocated to me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Actually, I have almost completed at exactly the same time.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
2:45. So, yeah, you've spoken for 30 minutes, and that's exactly the allocated time. Thank you very much for this insightful talk. And you have really talked on many things, regarding the economy. We will have our discussants. They will comment on those things. But just briefly, I've talked from the beginning on issues surrounding the foreign exchange, the revenue generation. You compared the Nigeria state of the economy to even other countries. You talk about also the budget implementation, the GDP. You even highlighted, some of the issues that recently we faced, especially in the northern communities where agriculture is the main industrialized activity. The farming, where the farmers, they go to the farm, they farm at the, cost of the fertilizer is high, cost of petrol, for irrigation is high, but still the raw food in the market is cheap. So you also highlighted these unsustainable issues, and we hope that the policy makers will look at these issues and address them, which is the main purpose actually of this kind of discussion. Apart from discussing the issue, we then ignite actions. Thank you very much, Dr. Rislanudeen, for this insightful talk. Inshallah, we will have some other time again to come back and talk on other relevant matters. Thank you very much. So without taking much of time, I think Prof. Rafindadi was with us, but it seems like he is out of the meeting now. So perhaps when he is back before the end of the meeting, we can give him an opportunity to speak. So Is Dr. Fasua with us, Dr. Adam? Otherwise, we can go to the next discussant, Dr. Jamil. Dr. Jamil, please, could you provide your discussion in about 10 minutes? You have had the insightful talk, but just before you start, you start your talk, let me provide a brief about Dr. Jamil. Dr. Jamil basically is an economist and a postdoctoral fellow at the CC, Center for the Studies of Economists of Africa. He has vast expertise in development research, financial regulation, and macroeconomic analysis. So, Dr. Jamil, without taking much of time, I have tried to summarize your CV. Please, you have the floor to make your comments. You can on your camera, yeah, and then.
Okay.
Maybe you need to change your direction. Yeah, okay, good.
Okay.
Yes, we can see you.
Okay. So good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank our Dr. Rislanudeen, for this wonderful presentation. It's quite timely and insightful. However, the key issues raised are actually some of the policy, issues that is actually affecting Nigeria severely. Without much ado, I would like to start with the discussion about the debt to GDP ratio. He has mentioned the issue surrounding rebasing and how the rebasing creates the illusion of expanded fiscal space that the fiscal authorities now are actually exploring viciously. And another area which is quite interesting that people don't even give much thought about it, which for quite of a while, I myself and Prof. Rafindadi and Dr. Gudu have been researching a lot about it, is the issue of external debt composition between the states and the federal government. In recent times, the states are even more exposed to external debt burden. About 65% of the state debt is now in external form, is foreign. And Doctor also mentioned the issue of exchange rate impact on our public debt. So the extent to which exchange rate usually affects our domestic debt is through exchange rate valuation effect. And in a study between me and Dura and Prof. Rafindadi, we discovered that the first rule of exchange rate domestic, the general value of our domestic, our debt is actually the exact proportion of the external debt in the total debt. So what does this imply? It implies that given the increased exposure of the states compared to the federal government in terms of external debt borrowing, then they are more vulnerable to exchange rate shocks and other issues that happen at the international arena, changes in the international debt burden in the international rate, like the Eurobond and the rest. Then another issue that I feel people should understand about this increased borrowing by the state and their exposure is what they call the contingency liability risks. In most cases, the state actually, the federal government is actually the guarantor to the states. So in the case of default, they cannot default, but that the rising debt from the state can actually transfer indirectly to the federal government at the federal government level, which also is another risk that people are not looking into. Then, as Dr. also actually mentioned, the structural composition of Nigeria's debt today is actually alarming. Increasing portion of the debt now is actually a short-term debt. And another portion of it is the issue of the interest rate structure. The Eurobond flotation, which is usually a market-based interest rate. So it's actually taking a hold. It's playing now a significant role in terms of our debt dynamics, which if care is not taken is going to create a serious fiscal problem or fiscal challenge for the country to address.
It's a short term, it's market based, it's mostly determined or driven by changes in the market condition. So this one is also a serious problem that I think the fiscal authorities should have a look at, or have a rethink that this is a serious wahala that they need to address. Another issue is the issue of this our fiscal rule. 2007 Fiscal Act has mandated that our debt to GDP ratio should not go beyond 40%. However, before the revision, Nigeria has reached about 52%, which is 12 percentage points higher than the fiscal threshold. But somehow, miraculously, the revision has now bring back the illusion that Nigeria has actually, complied with the rule now. The ratio is now about 30-something percent. So people ask questions, right? But the debt levels are still very high, right? But because of this revision, the ratio is automatically now reduced. And what it implies is that Nigeria can still borrow more and our debt will still be sustainable. But the question is the reduction actually an indication of improved fiscal space? That is the question that usually people don't ask, which I will throw to the audience to ponder about, whether the recent revision actually created a actual fiscal space for the country, or is this an illusion created for the federal government to justify additional borrowing, which will compound our fiscal challenges in the future. And it may also create another, increase, tax on the masses. Because if the government keeps growing, the implication is that it's either they make money from the oil revenue or they tax people more in this already fragile economy of ours. Another issue that actually Prof raised is about issue of agri, the cost of farming, particularly for the north. And I think this one is not even, it's no longer a northern problem. It's a challenge that cuts across all aspects of Nigeria, every section of the country. Farmers are complaining. The cost of inputs are very high. But yet, the price of food prices have crashed. For some people who are not farmers, this is a welcome development. But what about the farmers? That is the question. They have spent a lot of money to produce their output, and they have to sell at a cheaper price. Let me pose like the real economic question. You see, this issue is issue of resource reallocation. The core inflation items, which are the things that we usually buy in the shops, the soap and other things, are still very high. So if a farmer sells his product at a cheaper rate and goes to the provision store or a convenience store to buy a soap or to buy a perfume, the core inflation items and other things. So he is, on the other hand, selling his own item on the cheap, while the core inflation items are still selling at a higher price. And most unfortunately for him at the same time is that the core inflation items, his output are usually part of the inputs used in production of those core inflation items. So the capitalist class, or those that own means of production, are actually taking his own output on the cheap and using it as an input, and at the same time selling to him at a higher price, because he has to go to the shop and buy other things that he doesn't produce. It has to be produced in the factory. So I think this issue of falling food prices is a welcome development on the other hand, but on the other hand, it's actually posing a real resource reallocation between farmers and the corporate class, which I think people should also ponder about it. It's a very critical issue. And another aspect of it is the policy. The importation. The federal government allow the major buyers of our product domestically to import. So price will naturally crash because Major buyers are no longer buying from our farmers. They are imported. But the question is whether this is a long-term solution or a temporary solution that is going to create a bigger problem in the future for the country. Because this one is just like short-termism. You cannot solve your problem, as Dr. Ratili put, by importation. You have to build a very strong and a solid economy, foundation for your economy to thrive. So by allowing imports, you have created another problem. You are increasing poverty. Already farmers cannot go to the farm because of the security challenges. Now they have to sell on the cheap. And very soon we will start to hear that inflation has gone down significantly. Therefore, some success has been achieved for the country. Well, the real sense, nothing has been achieved. The problems keep compounding in terms of the debt levels, inflation, estimate, wahala. Think of everything, even poverty. Nigeria is suffering from middle income poverty. You are working, but you are poor. You are working, but you are poor. You are even concerned of food. For goodness sake, food. A working class citizen in Nigeria, his problem is food. Anytime he suddenly enters, the person is food. In a developed tribe, food should not be the worry of a working class citizen. But that melanin syndrome is all about food.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jamil.
Okay, Dr. Odin.
Yeah, thank you so much. I mean,
Okay,
with those wonderful remarks, I mean, yeah, you have digested what Dr. Rislanudeen has really said. I mean, and I think just because of the time, maybe you will still come back again towards the end. But I could see Dr. Fasua also. I think he has arrived. Just to confirm, please, is Dr. Fasua with us?
Yes, I'm with you. Thank you.
Great. Okay, great. So, I mean, before our next discussant, we will invite Dr. Fasua to come and give his remarks. Just a brief about Dr. Fasua. Also, like I did to Dr. Rislanudeen, he has a very long CV, but I tried as much as possible to summarize it because of the time. So our next distinguished guest, Dr. Fasua, is an economist, is a chartered accountant, a consultant, and currently is a special advisor to the president on economic affairs. He brings expertise across banking, public policy, and economic analysis. He's the founder of Global Analytics Consulting, a media commentator, and author of several well-known books. His work spans financial markets, macroeconomic strategy, and national economic reforms. Dr. Fasua, we are highly delighted to have you today in our midst, and especially at this critical time. And though you have not been able to hear, I think, the whole presentation of Dr. Rislanudeen, but he has talked on key issues related to the current state of the economy. And I think as someone, in the government, really your insights on these issues and what the government is trying to do to address some of these issues, and perhaps some of the recommendations also that you could take from here will be able to make a huge difference. So it's my pleasure to welcome you on board, and you have the virtual mic. You can please make your remarks.
Okay, thank you very much. And I thank the organizers for inviting me in. I was able to listen to the last speaker. I think is that Dr. Eliasu speak.
Yes, we could hear you, but we could not see you. Maybe, I don't know. Are you aware of that?
In fact, I'm behind the wheels, but
yeah, that's fine. Yeah, that's fine. This is good.
It may affect the quality of the voice, but let's try it out.
Okay.
So anyway, I listened to quite a bit of what the last speaker had said, and well, I was a bit worried as he spoke because he sounded as if everything was negative about the economy, which I don't think is the case. But of course, it depends on how we spin it and how the perspective we approach it from, especially when he spoke about the farmers. Now, Yes, I've heard about farmers' complaints, and however, my perspective on that is that if food inflation was a key driver of our inflation, and food inflation went down, and inflation went down in tow, that's the general inflation went down in tow, the headline inflation. It's better for everybody in the economy. If a farmer is a maize farmer, or the farmer cannot also be a palm oil farmer. He can be a vegetable oil producer. He can't, every food that he eats, he can produce. Therefore, if he goes to the market and other food prices are down and inflation is going down in the economy at large, it's better for that farmer, inclusive of every other person in the economy. Lowering inflation is always better for everybody in the economy. If we will go by even Milton Friedman's theory, that inflation is man's worst enemy and should be tackled by all means, So, well, we don't have to rescue defeat from the jaws of victory if the economy is being positive in that respect. That's to say one. And secondly, um, of course, it's not all bad for the economy. Uh, and I think the attitude we bring to it is what matters. So your theme says that I should speak about the vulnerabilities of around the debts as well as growth for the economy. So the first thing about the debt is that with our debt to GDP at around 40% of 39.4% or thereabout, comparatively with other parts of with the rest of the world and with our comparator countries, it is pretty low indeed. Of course, we like to say that the debt to GDP is not what matters, but the debt revenue, the revenue to debt servicing to revenue ratio, that is also accepted. However, we have seen a scenario where our revenue seems to be growing, and we have been a bit more efficient about revenue collection. Certainly, unfortunately, again, as till the last speaker said, I heard things said about government taxing people more, people working without and feeling poor and all. Well, I was just reading an article yesterday where it was said that about 70% of Amazon's workers in Massachusetts in the US are on food stamp, uh, which means that there seems to be a phenomenon of the kind of capitalism around the world today where maybe government is subsidizing, the private sector. People are cutting down on how much they can pay their people. So it's not just a government issue, it's also a private sector issue. So it's not just, also, we cannot say that people are just working, government is taxing more. Now, the government has put in place a tax reform, which actually frees majority of Nigerians from taxation. Anybody earning 1 million naira and below is supposed not to be taxed at all. Companies with turnovers of 50 million naira and below will not pay taxes as well, even including VAT. I think we have to be fair to this government. Politics aside, we need to be very fair to this government. So, but back to the issue of debt. My opinion, when we look at our comparative countries in Africa alone, Egypt, South Africa, maybe Kenya, Ghana, the minimum you will find in debt to GDP is 70% in all those countries. Minimum 70%, minimum 65%. Now, what it means, if you run a country the way you would run a corporation, a good treasurer of a corporation does not sit on cash and assets. You have to leverage. You have to leverage your cash and your assets. Okay, so there's no joy in saying that. Look, we are great at having a big GDP, but we don't know what to do with for our people. We're not ready to borrow to do infrastructure long term. Or are you wishing to fund your infrastructure by cash, what we earn on a yearly basis? Of course, we will not move. And so this is where we are. So please, you see, we cannot ask for everything at the same time. If government is being more efficient in revenue collection, I thought that should be everybody's happiness. Again, I mean, many of us go abroad, we comply with tax rules, but we come back to Nigeria and we don't even want to pay anything at all. And yet we want the country to be, the next thing to El Dorado. So it won't work. So on that basis, we know there are vulnerabilities. As a matter of fact, there's a concern around global debt. Nigeria doesn't even feature. Africa has only about 1.8% of global debt. Africa is not growing. We should be worried that we're not growing. If there was 100 naira on the table for the whole world to collect, the whole of Africa is collecting 1 naira 80 kobo. Okay, and the rest of the world has grabbed the remaining, and they're doing things with it. So, do we want to continue to be this way, mediocre, underachievers? I don't think that should be the concern. I don't think that should be our aim at this point in time. So in that regard, so please, I would suggest on that whereas, yes, a country can borrow itself into bankruptcy, it has happened in the past. Nigeria is one country that has never, ever defaulted on its debt, unlike countries like Venezuela, Russia, even Argentina, about 9 times. We've never defaulted, okay? So I think that we should support the revenue drive, which frees up most people from taxation, and see how we can use that increased revenue to improve our debt service to revenue ratio, to ensure that revenue grows larger, and all that. And I think that if we look at it that way, 39.4 or 40% debt to GDP is actually very low, is actually suboptimal. I was thinking about this, and the fact that Nigeria is supposed to be a very poor country, perhaps the poorest country on earth. We usually embrace any negative indices about this country. Everything negative they bring, we say, yes, we are the poorest country in the world, the country with the most number of illiterates, the sickest country in the world, and all of that. I don't just buy those things off the shelf. I don't believe many of those things. I don't think this country is as bad as they say it is. For example, why is Nigeria the second country in cryptocurrency trading around the world? Why? Why is Nigeria giving MTN 40% of its profit since they came into this country in 2001? Why? Consistently. Remember that when we wanted to go down GSM route, this Vodafone in the UK commissioned one of the big four, maybe PwC or so, to do a survey. And they went back and said that this country, the people are too poor, they can't even use the phone. However, he took a South African in MTN and Zimbabwe, Airtel in Zimbabwe, or what they used to be called, Economist, to come to this country and make a big kill. And that proportion has never reduced. That means a country where people can have, that much access and money to continue to call and use data and all of that cannot be the poorest country in the world. But it depends on what we want to believe. And I think we should be very careful what we believe and what we propagate. Perhaps our country would have grown faster if we didn't have such a negative attitude to even our own being as a country and our potentials as a country. I'm talking about growth, GDP, growth and the vulnerabilities to that. So we're doing 3.98% last quarter. Hopefully, maybe we will close this year at an average of about 3.8, 3.9, maybe 4% of GDP growth. Still not good enough. This economy, if our population is growing at 2.3, 2.6%, we need to be growing faster. Given also the fact that we have so much space for growth. I mean, forget all these problems we have with insecurity, which tends to slow us down. When you look at those security problems, it seems as if there's a grand plan to ensure that we continue to be unstable. It took when Mr. Trump spoke recently and said some nasty things about Nigeria, and the next day we started seeing mass kidnapping. Why? Why were those people standing by? Who are those people after this country? Except we think about this country as a unified unit, as a people who are together, who will not make progress. So the vulnerabilities around our growth, when we should actually be targeting double-digit growth, because we can do it. China did it for more than 15 years, double-digit growth. Nigeria needs it as the biggest economy, biggest population in Africa. We need it. We can do it. And I can tell you how we can do it. We haven't even pressed in our labor, our human capital well enough. We haven't even industrialized well enough. We haven't even gone beyond being a primary product economy well enough. So there's so much space for growth in this country, and I think we can do it. But of course, insecurity is a present danger. Consider present danger to achieving that, but not only insecurity. Of course, there are inefficiencies within the system and all of that, which actually precludes us. And of course, the lack of unity, the lack of vision, across in many places, when we cannot actually imagine our country to be much bigger and better than it is, those would be the growth inhibitors for us. But I would generally, and to conclude, I would certainly not be looking at the negatives. I've been, I understand the power of communication, of even ensuring that our people become more positive towards their country and the effect that that can have on growth. Okay, and I think I would remain on that point, given the fact that we have enough people who are ready to rubbish whatever achievement made not by government, but by Nigerians it as a Nigerian issue. Nigeria as a whole is growing. It doesn't matter which government is there. However, 4% growth, as good as it is, and which it actually outstrips the projections of IMF and World Bank and co, who are thought that will just remain around 3%, 3.2%. I think we can do a lot better than even the 4%, 4.23% and co that we are posting if we come together. So that's the way I look at it. There's so many more things to discuss. Perhaps if I stay on the call, I'll be able to respond to some.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Fasua, and I think you have provided also a more balanced, or robust, our speaker has touched on some very key things, about the economy, and I believe also he will have some comments. He would want to, address some of the issues you raised. So just before I invite Dr. Rislanudeen, I think I will once again thank you very much. I can see you are even driving, but you join us, considering the importance you attached to this program. Thank you very much. We appreciate that. And also, I think part of what you have said, there are some concerns that I would just like to highlight. Maybe after my comments, then I will invite Dr. Rislanudeen, then you can combine the two and kind of respond to them. Especially, specifically on the issues of like the local farmers, like you mentioned, it's always good to have inflation cut. Actually, that's the best for all the citizens. But what people are saying is the approach used, in cutting the inflation. For example, if the prices of the raw materials, like let's say the fertilizers, like the petrol for the irrigation, all that is very high, so the farmers are getting those things, at high prices, and also now the price of the raw food in the market is cheap. So, and the reason basically they are saying is because, processed rice, is being imported, from outside. So what people are saying, instead of using importation as the solution, why not provide the raw materials, at a cheaper prices, make them available to the farmers. That way, the prices cut, the inflation could be sustainable. But the current method we are being adopted, that's what people are really pointing at. So this is just one point. In order to save time, I would like to invite Dr. Rislanudeen also to make his comments. Then maybe you can address these issues together. Dr. Rislanudeen, I can see your hand is raised already, so you can unmute, please.
All right.
Maybe
Thank you,
your
Doc.
camera. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Doc. First, I think honestly, I am surprised with the response of Dr. Fasua. I think it is much because my expectation is for him to respond to my presentation. And I know him very well. He's my brother. Let me just give the background.
I think he missed part of your presentation.
Let me just give you a declaration. He is but you see, but I still have problem, with the context to which his response. Number one, by my knowledge, this group is not a political organization.
Right.
By my knowledge, this is the first time you invited me for.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
And if unfortunately Dr. Fasua didn't have the time to, he didn't join by the time I did my presentation, which is the lead presentation. There is nothing political, there is nothing sentimental, and he knows me very well. There is nothing political, nothing sentimental about my presentation. What I expected him to do as a discussant, rather, on this matter is, if assuming he has listened to me, unfortunately, I can see he's on the road, so you couldn't have done that. So just to set the record straight, at least since he didn't listen to my presentation, I raised some pauses. Number one, in my presentation, which is already recorded, I did not say there is nothing bad in borrowing, but there is everything good in sustainable borrowing. And on the same debt issue, I highlighted two issues. Number one, as far as the foreign debt component are concerned, I said we should borrow, but we should focus on low-cost funds. We should, as much as possible, do away with Eurobond, which is expensive. On domestic debt, I said domestic debt now is local borrowings is being crowded out by portfolio investors who bring in money, thankfully use the same money to stabilize our exchange rate. At least we have a stable exchange rate, predictable we can be able to predict what exchange rate will be overnight. We will not go to bed and think that the next day our rate will increase by 100 naira or 15 naira and so on and so forth. But this is one level of success. The next thing is we should look at our portfolio and gradually find a way of stabilizing our exchange rate through export diversification, dealing with issues relating to ensuring that we ramp up our oil production, and we should be able to stabilize our exchange rate within our own capability, not from exogenous factors, temporary factors, like the one coming from portfolio investors that are simply coming to make money. Effective yield of treasury bills today, I said, is 20% plus. Nobody will run away from that country. Nobody. They will come and they will bring the money and they will take it away. Is the money productive? The answer is no. And I also mentioned the fact that gradually CBN have, to me, my mind, dogmatically, I mentioned the fact that there was corruption in development financing. So I can give that to CBN that you need to put a pause. But I'm saying that a CBN of developing country must be involved in development financing. Somehow there was corruption, they should deal with it and find an effective way of intervening in the economy through supporting targeted industries, through supporting DFIs and so on. As it is now, CBN is just simply saying that, no, we are going to assume our core mandate of financial system stability, looking at issues around exchange rate, inflation rate, interest rate, and so on, which they are doing, and which I confess in the presentation that they are doing it well. What I'm saying is, if you just deal with, you have two legs and the two are bad, and you deal with one, somebody is in charge of dealing with one, and he or she deals with it, and look at the other one, his brother that has the second leg, and saying that, no, it's not my problem. At the end of the day, the individual may not be able to walk. He may not even be able to crawl. So there must be synchronization in terms of both fiscal and monetary authorities. And I also mentioned the fact that these funds are crowding out domestic investment because of the high MPR, notwithstanding the fact that inflation has come down. Borrowing is very expensive today. Who is going to borrow in a productive venture at over 30%? I have been in banking industry. I worked in banking for over 30 years. And I'm saying this authoritatively, unless if somebody wants to do speculation. And on revenue, I give it to the government that they have met up with the target, even 2025 revenue target, but there is still no money. That means it is not enough. That means there must be some ways in ensuring that the ambitious policy of government is matched by improved revenue generation, and also caution the fact that we should not overtax, noting the tax, the new tax policy truly favors the low income earners. At some level, they cannot even pay loan. I didn't mention that. But I say we should ensure that it becomes progressive so that it doesn't get in paper. And we should also ensure that we should not overtax. I mentioned the classic case of Aso Lapa and his Lapa Cup. And just quickly to summarize, and on agriculture, I mentioned the fact that temporary measure will not resolve our agricultural crisis. Elites, you and I bought some bags of maize ahead of 10 bags of 12 ahead of Ramadan at 40,000 naira. Last year it was 70 or 80 plus. I am happy. I can do that. Can somebody do that in the hinterland? Can he or she buy? The answer, he may be able to buy only what he can feed himself. At the same time, a bag of fertilizer is twice as much. Why don't government look at two things at the same time? Take this policy of stabilizing the high cost of agricultural products as a temporary measure, which they have done successfully, and then quickly deal with the larger crisis of ensuring that they avoid corruption and ensure that inputs are provided to farmers. It has happened before. So it's not reinventing any wheel. The only thing is to deal with the aspect of corruption in whatever form it's involved, whether at the state level or the local level. But I argued that this solution is not sustainable to say that you will import and make those in the city happy, and those in the hinterland are losing their jobs. They have nothing to do because there is no incentive to go to farm if a bag of maize or rice is half the price of a fertilizer. So
all right, thank you very much,
so
Dr. Rislanudeen.
Yeah, I am not militant, or even if I was as a younger person, I am not militant, and I used to hold you, in several other fora. So maybe you didn't listen to me because I didn't like a situation where you portrayed as if, you are bringing so many things that were even outside the scope, and as if we are just sitting down here to criticize the government. We are not.
No, I think, like you said,
Very
Dr.
much.
Rislanudeen, it's very important. Just before I invite Dr. Fasua again, I will invite Dr. Fasua next, but just before he comes back, the purpose of this kind of presentation organized by the Arewa Youth Mentorship Program basically is just kind of to create a national discourse, especially on topical issues. National economy is one of strategic areas. So we felt like, when we gather experts and they highlighted some of the problems, and we have some people in the government also in the discussion, we can have kind of some common points, some intersection where we will all agree. And also we have some gray areas where we all agree that it needs, some panel beating. So like I said, all of us, we want to see this country, great. We want to see the economy booming. We want to see everything flourishing, regardless of who is at the helm of the affairs. That's not the most important thing for us. So please, having this in mind, our speakers, let's have kind of a discussion that will really help, in providing solutions. Yeah. So Dr. Fasha, please, you could now address those issues.
Yes, very quickly, and thanks for the platform and the opportunity to speak. Of course, I did not hear Dr. Rislanudeen. I wasn't here then. And of course, I thank him for giving that clarification. I trust him to always be a very professional and intellectual at all points in time. We've been together. I've been his mentee for many years now. So, in fact, I do almost agree with everything he has said in terms of, I think he almost recapped his presentation all over again. I agree with him on the issue of debt, plus or minus in terms of why we need to recalibrate our portfolio and be careful about commercial loans. I do very much agree with him on that. However, on the issue of Greek, which is very critical, I want us to also understand that, part of what I said is just that, look, I'm interested in lowering inflation levels. And hopefully, another inflation number will be announced on Monday. We hope that we sustain the 7-month trajectory of reduction in inflation month on month. Hopefully, maybe if we're able to clock 13% by the end of this year, which will come in next year, January, I personally will be very happy because inflation reduction is good for everybody in the country. On agric, it's very important to say that the part of what we're ignoring sometimes is that we've had 2 years of very good harvests, and we've not had very destructive floods in the last 2 years compared to what happened in 2022, which was a repeat of what happened in 2012. And because of that, perhaps we've had bumper harvests for 2 years on. Now, in terms of risk management, that is not the way to go. You don't plan on luck in risk management. However, we've been lucky, in 2 years now. So, and again, a lot of people also went into agriculture in the last 2 years, perhaps in reaction to some of the adversities we had in the past. Remember, in 2022, with all the floods, especially in the north, Kebbi and Co. Of course, that was when food prices went up 300%, 400% in this country. So, of course, majority of the people are non-farmers. So, and in Pareto efficiency, 80-20, if we have a scenario where a policy is good for 80% of the country and we have it not being good for 20%, you can walk away with that and say, let's see how this goes. Of course, farmers are very strategic for any economy because before anything else is food. If people don't have food to eat, they go crazy. I mean, it's just the way things are. So let's look at those aspects of agriculture. And I believe that if inflation continues to drop, even fertilizers and other inputs of agriculture will also fall. We begin to reduce in prices or not increase in prices. Or maybe just stay where they are or increase very marginally. But I think there's also a government initiative to ensure that input costs for farmers are very much reduced for strategic reasons. The first security is food security. That's that. On the central bank, I think that, yes, central bank walked away from development financing because of the experiences of the past where we went overboard. For me, I think partly that is due to the COVID pandemic. And, that pandemic actually drove every economy crazy to some extent. In Nigeria, there was a time central bank was the one funding aviation, funding agric, funding power, funding everything, generally just distributing money. The current management of central bank decided that, look, we can't do that. But I saw that just on Thursday, the same central bank started convening some meeting to say that, look, we have to have some sort of intervention for agriculture. And I see that, okay, maybe they are turning the corner to understand that, look, we cannot stay away from funding that very critical sector, or at least bringing stakeholders together to say, how can we do better in this area? So that's as far as that's concerned, So I only responded to some of what I heard from, I think, Dr. Elias.
Yes,
Certainly
that's
not
right.
Dr. Rislanudeen. And I thank you and I thank your platform Keep it be very intellectual. I'm happy to be here. Anytime else you call me, I will always create time to come. I need to sign off now because my battery is running down, almost down now.
Yeah,
So
it's
thank
okay.
you
I
very much.
mean, yeah, thank you very much. I mean, we really appreciate you, Dr. Fasua, for coming.
Thank you,
I'm
Doc.
looking
I'll
forward to
talk to you
see.
later.
Yes,
Thank you,
thank
sir.
you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right.
So, I mean, that has been some fruitful exchanges, with Dr. Fasua. And I think without taking much of time now, I will invite the next discussant just in about 5 minutes to, give his remarks. Dr. Adamu Ahmed Udil. So Dr. Ahmed is a research fellow at CC also. He works on Islamic finances, development economics, public finance, and evidence-based policy. So, Dr. Adam, you have had all these discussions, from experts, Dr. Rislanudeen, Dr. Fasua, Dr. Jamil. So, what do you have to add to this discussion?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And I will start by congratulating Dr. Rislanudeen for a wonderful presentation. Likewise, Dr. Tope Fasua coming in brings some sort of like extra intellectualism with the discussion, and it's add more value to it. Also, Dr. Jamilu and Prof. Rafindadi, although Prof. Rafindadi was here 30 minutes ago and he has sent his own presentation, which I already forwarded to you. Maybe you can read later because he has
maybe because of
supposed to
time.
put it up.
Yes, it's
Yeah.
okay.
So I will dwell on three things based on the presentation. Of course, the challenge of a Nigerian debt is not just the size, but the weakness of the revenue. We all know about this. And the debt to GDP ratio, in all the presentation, we have been mentioning it's below 10%, below 40%. And it can appear that on technical basis, it is okay for us to borrow. But then how do we link this borrowing to growth? Because that's the major problem. And of course, the projected debt service to revenue ratio of about 46% in 2026. It just tells us that this debt increasing, it's unaffordable for us. And even if it is technically okay, but really it's not, there is nothing good about it. If you look at the US, their debt to GDP ratio, you can see maybe like it's very far from us, Singapore and the likes. But what these countries are able to do, they link that debt to growth. But this is what we have not been achieved quite well. The second issue is about the domestic debts and the interest cost. You can see the sharp rise from 43 trillion in 2023 to 83 trillion in 2025. It signals a lot that this cost, there is growing reliance on this high cost of borrowing, which Dr. Rislanudeen made mention that we need to have a way of cautioning this going forward. And of course, the issue of structural vulnerability, which they have made mention about subnational debts based on the states and based on the major states, oil producing states, and of course, we talk about Lagos. So these are things that we have to be carefully, it has to be carefully crafted because it will always be leading to tightening fiscal space. We wouldn't have much money to do a lot of things, meaning that we'll just be borrowing without doing the necessary thing, rather than doing the growth tide payments through the borrowing, we end up servicing the debts. It's going to be like 46%. For example, you borrow certain amount, we end up repaying other loans rather than channeling it into infrastructure. So the basic things, as far as these things are concerned, they are in major economics or the margin economics are trying to shift from all these conventional way of borrowings and the likes to try to look at lower cost, which the presenter have already made mention. And we can take a case study of Malaysia, which can be as an alternative to our domestic borrowing. So we can corporation were in Nigeria, and they had a 2-day workshop with the CBN on how to basically structuring Sukuk and the like, and how to generate liquidity, which I can see most of the banks are participant to this. So this is to tell you that Nigeria is keen into Islamic financing, looking at innovative financing, shifting to an alternative way of financing through Sukuk. So because you see, Sukuk is project linked. So each project is linked to the Sukuk. So this is to tell you that the money that is collected will be judicially used for such projects rather than our normal debts, that we usually use to service our our budgetary allocation in most cases. So overall, the presentation is tight. All we need to do is the policy management issue rather than just an imminent crisis. And with discipline, fiscal reforms, improvement in mobilization, and what have you, things can go well. And we are talking about tax reform going next year. So it's not just about tax reform. It goes beyond tax reform. It has to do with reforming beyond the taxation. We have to be talking about how do we improve compliance? How do we even formalize the economic activities? Most of our SMEs, they are not on board, meaning that the informal sector are very much more than the formal sector. So my thinking is government should do a lot in terms of formalizing these economic activities rather than forging ahead trying to go for tax reform. It's not just tax reform, it goes beyond that. We need to bring everyone on board. We need to improve the compliance. We need to put awareness to these people in such a way that when this kind of policy starts, we'll have a lot of compliance and it will be a success, because this is what we are looking for. We are talking about debt to GDP. So once we are able to regenerate our revenue, have more than what we have been earning, although the presenter have been mentioned that we have met our target, but then the money is not there. So we have to have a way of pumping in more money within the economy. But then it has some economic implication. You cannot just be taxing people. Once you tax people, it will affect productivity, and then we'll have issue of unemployment. So we are going from one problem to another. So we have to do this in a very tactical way and in a very gradual and professional way going forward. And thank you for giving me this opportunity. Arewa
thank
Youth
you.
Mentorship Program.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Adam. I mean, that has been a wonderful contribution to the program. I think with this we have come to at the end of the talk. I really wanted us to round it off at maximum 5:30, so that we will allow our speaker to go and attend to other important matters that he has. I can understand that most of the speakers are busy, some even are on the road, but they just squeezed to join this program. Now, because of that, maybe we will also like to allow our audience, maybe 2 or 3 at least, to ask or make some comments, to ask questions or make some comments, So you can raise up your hand, please, and ask your question. At least we have Dr. Jamil, we have Dr. Adam also with us. They can attend to some of the questions. And if you prefer to write, maybe you can also write on the chat box. Then I can ask maybe Abubakar to read some of the questions from the chat. So please, Salisu Barodo, please, you want to make a comment?
Yes. Hello. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Hope we're all fine.
Alaikum salam.
So first, I want to give an information based on the World Bank report about Nigeria that came out. They said there are estimated 139 million people in poverty. This 2025. In 2023, it was about 83. In a nutshell, in about 2 years, we have freshly minted 50 million new poverty-driven people. 50 million. This is World Bank report. They said this year is 139. As of 2023, it was what? 89. This is serious. Imagine they have tendency for activism. The country is gone. Full stop. Second, debt utilization. So if I may suggest, hopefully to the economics predominantly, and hopefully those in government, how do we put a debt utilization quality assurance tracker dashboard? All these loans, debts, how do we ensure they are actually tracked? Of course, someone was talking about sukuk that are tied to project and so on and so forth. A kind of dashboard, real time, so that people will know what's actually going on. And lastly, similar to the second point I made, is about our local government, 774. Theoretically, we said there is a Supreme Court judgment that said everyone could what? Every local government are sort of independent, but they are still dilly-dallying. So I think somehow, is it the economics, those in government, or we can even utilize this insecurity that we have? Perhaps the NSA come up with a bold measure to ensure some systems is put in place that forces transparency, accountability in our 774. That is where the bulk of the people are. That is where tailored policies could be designed so that each local government will have its own competitive advantage. Economics all like to talk about that. Each one will look at their unique and they tailor it so that we ensure there is quality assurance. There is
Thank you, Salis.
misgovernance, accusations, and so on and so forth. Please, we
Thank
need
you.
to do
Thank
much.
you. Thank you, Salis. Thank you very much
Thank
for
you.
this great contribution. Ilya Ismail, please, you can unmute in 30 seconds, please.
Hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, concerning the issue of improvement in inflation, I think it's only food inflation that is reducing. But if you consider other inflation like building materials, like somebody talk about the issue of farm input, I think this year most of the irrigation farmers, they will not go to farm for cultivating rice and maize because of the low price of this food staple and the high cost of input. So we need the reduction or improvement in the prices of building materials, because even at the government price now, a 1 unit of house is costing over 18 million, which is beyond the reach of the 300,000 ENA per month a government worker. So there are a lot of issues that need to be addressed. So I will say, as you
Thank
said,
you. Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you. Abdul Hadi Musa, please.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon to the presenters.
Good afternoon, please. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation so far. It's quite a learning environment. My questions are very brief. 2 questions, perhaps. The first one is centered around the issue of debt. I think this is one of the bone of contention throughout the presentation. Now, when you look at the subsidy removal, I think we now have a means whereby there are funds, or rather source of revenue, to both the national and subnationals. But however, the rise in debt also, why is it not correlated? I think that's my first question. My second question is on the issue of food product. I don't know, why is it that I don't know how to put it, but the cost of production is high, but after the harvest and the cost is low, and this only affect the food sector. I don't know if you want to even use the food, why buying other material? The food the other materials are even costly than the food. So I don't know what is it that the government needs to put in place policy wise to see that both line are being filled. I mean the gap. Thank you very much.
Okay, good. Thank you very much. I think this will be the last question. Yeah, we will have some in the chat box. But before we go there, Dr. Jamil, please, would you want to address these concerns?
Okay. Dr. Odu, can you hear me? Am I audible?
Yes, we can hear you, Doctor.
Okay. I would like to start by thanking the participants for their wonderful comments and questions. That shows the level of their attention to the program. We are thankful for that. So let me start with the question raised by Ilya Ismail, where he made mention that the cost of building materials are skyrocketing, right? And other aspects of core inflation. He also mentioned that a new report by the World Bank shows about 139, right? Nigeria's poor are poor.
Yeah.
So let me even add to his information that the statistic, we can go and check the statistic for working poverty in Nigeria. Working poverty, high income working poverty is 94%. Then the middle income poverty is 74%. I think 74.something%. To tell you how worse the situation is in Nigeria. We cannot deny the fact that Nigeria is trying, right? But we can also not look away from the problems, because it is quite unfortunate that Fasua is not here. I would have said to him that the same person he quoted about inflation being the enemy also said that you cannot judge policies by their intention, but rather by their outcomes. If you want to know whether a particular policy is working or not, look at the outcome. You can have a wonderful policy, a very nice objective, but if the outcome is not desired, is bad, that policy is a bad policy. And there's nothing wrong in doing a U-turn. For example, you also mentioned that the cost of 1 unit of house is about 18 million, which means many Nigerians cannot afford. I hope I answered your question. Then coming to the Abdul Hadi, I think Abdul Hadi, you raised a very fundamental question. Why is it there's no correlation between subsidy removal, right, and our debt levels in Nigeria? To add to that, I'll also add to why is it there's no correlation between subsidy removals and exchange rate gains, right, from devaluation and our debt levels? Because exchange rate subsidy removals should have saved money for the federal government, right? They have free up resources, do other things. So if the federal government has savings from the subsidy, we should not be seeing what increased borrowing, because they have enough more money than the previous government. Second is the issue of exchange rate gains. For every $1 that Nigeria devalues, the federal government has made at least 1,000 naira gain when oil proceeds are coming in. The exchange rate gains, where are all those money going in? He then mentioned, he asked this fundamental question. So that even the borrowing we are borrowing now, we are seeing, right? Nobody knows where the money is going to. Because you cannot be borrowing and continue to borrow. And as the Rislanudeen made mention, we have achieved our revenue target, right? We have savings from the subsidy. We have exchange rate gains. But yet, we are borrowing massively more than ever. That is a fundamental question that everybody should ask. What is happening? What is the leakage? Something is leaking somewhere. Something is leaking somewhere. The debt levels are too high. Nigeria,
we have some questions here, Dr. Jamil. So
okay,
maybe
let me address the last one.
To read them.
Yes, okay.
Yeah, please. So maybe when he reads the question, you can combine and answer them together just to save the time.
Okay.
So please, Abubakar, you can extract some of the questions from our chat box and read, so Dr. Jamil and Dr. Adam can respond to them. Maybe you have to unmute.
Okay.
All right. Assalamu alaikum. Okay, thank you, Dr. Wudu. I think we have about 3 to 4 questions in the chat box.
Yeah.
So the first question, he said, excellent session. Thank you all presenters. But seriously, the import food policy by this government definitely causing unemployment in Nigeria. Example, 3 bags of maize cannot buy a 1 bag of fertilizer. Where are we heading to?
Okay, so that's the question about the products and raw materials prices. Okay, read the next so that maybe they can answer at some time.
Okay, the next question, he said, my question is, I have just seen Nigeria sign MOU with France in tax data compliance. How sure is that this will not affect our data privacy?
Okay. Dr. Jamil or Dr. Adam, would you like to answer that?
All right, thank you for the questions. With regards to the inflation, I think most of the questions are even interrelated.
Yeah.
But it's just simple. I can see Dr. Yahoo was able to even explain it well, based on his experience as a farmer and the like. So everybody can be able to say this. In as much as we want to lower inflation, we should not use any type of policy. The channel in which we lower this inflation is very important. We have to use a locally made strategy, to lower this inflation. Try and see what is the problem. If we say higher prices, right? Why don't we try to make the input lower in the country, so that in such a way that after the production and everything, the farmers can be able to pay at a very lower price, or sell at a very lower price as compared to the previous. But once you open a border, you are exposing your economy, because once people are trying to import, there are so many exogenous variables. We are talking about dollar, we are talking about exchange rate. So the problem will just be recycling. We are talking about inflation, then it has to be exchange rate volatility again. As I know, yesterday Naira has jumped from maybe 145 to 1,500. Why is this so? Because of the demand. So in as much as I'm a trader, I purchase something from maybe China down to Nigeria at the exchange rate of such amount, I need to sell it in a way that I will gain something. So in as much as I'm a business thinker and I will think that way. Definitely, issue of building materials. We are not even there yet, because most of these building material are imported products. So how can we lower these prices when the exchange rate is high and is always going high? And with regards to issue of correlation between the subsidy and this debt, issue of exchange rate and devaluation, we need to ask this to government. Where are you taking this money to? You have surplus here and there. Where is the money? Nobody is accounting for it. Where are we using? And with regards with the first comment that the first person made mention, the issue of a dashboard. These are things that are not visible. The only thing that our government should have a honest discussion on: how can we move this economy forward? How can we move this country forward? Other people have been in similar situation and they are able to pull out of the deadlock. Look at what Indonesians are doing now. Look at what Malaysia have been doing over the years. They were in this kind of situation before. So we have to have this kind of honest conversation by our policymaker, and we drive the strategy as we wish is the best for us. Otherwise, we'll just be jumping from one policy to another without any tangible impact.
Thank you, Doctor. So do we have another question? Oh, that's it. We can call it.
Yes, we have 2 more questions, I think.
Okay.
He said, excellent, wonderful intellectual session. Kudos and thank you all esteemed presenters. My question goes like this. What is the fate of Nigerian farmers considering the current Nigerian policies towards agriculture, since the government policies are not favorable to farmers? This is the first question.
This is almost answered.
Yeah. So the second one, he said, we all know that China's economic growth was primarily driven by its unique, pragmatic, and local economic strategies, but Nigeria is not even trying the same.
Okay, that's a comment.
Depending on international strategies, telling that economy is improving while we know the economy is not improving, rather deteriorating. Why is it that Nigeria will not try this strategy?
Yeah, great. Okay, I think most of the comments, they're just highlighting or adding some comments to the discussion. So, I mean, at this point, I think we should be able to conclude. But before we just go, I would like to invite Dr. Jamil maybe to add in 30 seconds to give his concluding remarks. And then Dr. Adam also. I think Dr. Rislanudeen maybe is out, but you can give your concluding remarks, maybe 30 seconds each, and then we call it off. Dr. Jamil, let me start with you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Udo. I think my last remark about this is that I now understand the severity of the problem. You look at the issues, it all revolves around now food, what will happen to the farmers. In closing, I will say it like this. Nigerian farmers will continue to farm because most of us are subsistence farmers. We farm to eat. So we continue to farm even if the prices are crashing. It's not going to be easy, but that will definitely happen. And as for the issue of this food import, why I continue to hold my stand, it's a short-term policy. And we are creating an open wound for both our farmers and for the country. No country will succeed without an honest, articulated, and a tailored policy that addresses key challenges. Like the issue of China, I will refer to the guy that made the comment to read this book by John Weiwei. It's called China Wave. Yes, China Wave by John Weiwei. You will see how China was able to achieve its greatness. So I think, thank you everybody for giving us the opportunity
Thank
to
you.
speak with you and to share our views.
Thank you.
And
Thank
I
you
hope
so
this
much.
will not be the only
Yeah, sure. This
session.
should be just, I mean, starting. We are just trying to ignite the discussion, until all attention comes to it. I mean, and the right steps and policies are put in place, to have, I mean, the desired outcome. Dr. Adam, your concluding remark. Okay, I think Dr. Adam also is out. Okay, so with this, we have come to the end of the talk. I would like to thank you all for coming, and I mean, I look forward to seeing you all on behalf of the entire Arewa Mentorship crew. We look forward to seeing you in our upcoming sessions. See you all soon. Thank you.
You can also be part of it as a mentor or student. Join the Arewa Youth Mentorship Program on Telegram, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. AYMP, together we can be great.